Hello everyone and welcome to the first IMASUS webinar series. Thank you for joining us today. We are excited to have participants joining from different countries and backgrounds, united by your belief in sustainability and fashion. We are Nancy and Ariana and will be your hosts for today's session, Introduction to the IMASUS Materials Database. We are part of the Institute of Nanoscience and Materials of Aragón, INMA, where we have been working on a database for IMASUS project.
IMASUS is a project funded by Erasmus Plus program. We represent 1 out of 4 participants. Our partners are Munkun, the European Creative Hubs Network, and Lottozero. In today's session, we will focus on sustainable materials. We will explore the database, discuss the work that went into developing it, and hear from 3 special guests, whose practical experience may be valuable for your own projects. IMASUS is a practice-based framework that links academic research on sustainable fashion materials with the practical needs of professionals in the fashion industry. The project is funded by the Erasmus Plus program with the objective to promote sustainable practice within the fashion sector.
For this part of the project, we researched different sustainable materials. Also, our goal was to gather consistent information about each material, so we tried to collect the same type of data for all of them. This allowed us to build a clear and organized database, as you can see in the screen. We have created a database with over 20 sustainable materials. We collected information on each of them regarding availability, applications, and other relevant aspects. And in the cases where we obtained samples, we also included some images of them, as well as videos and photographs.
There are some examples of textile materials we collect samples for analysis in the IMASUS project, including Life Materials. It's an Italian company whose material selection objectives are aligned with our project. We can see cypress denim, which imitates traditional denim and is made from recycled cotton and with fibers from Japanese cypress trees. Kapok's
from the ceiba tree. Its hollow fibers are used as a natural filling material, offering a sustainable alternative.
Muskin is an alternative to animal leather. It's made from a specific type of mushroom and it's biodegradable and eco-friendly.
Voltage is a German company with 100% bio-based material who has developed 2 sustainable materials. One of them is Lover, a material made from hemp residues that is biodegradable and recyclable. The other one is Matter, an algae-based material that is also biodegradable. This brand, ECHN, was launched by an Italian company named Aquafil in 2011. ECHN is a nylon-based material made entirely from polluting waste. Equalf is a Spanish company focused on sustainable fashion. Equalf creates clothing and accessories using recycled materials such as plastic, bottles, fishing nets, and another waste, aiming to reduce the use of natural resources while maintaining high quality and design.
Torneo Group is a Spanish textile company specialized in cotton fabrics and interlining. TNTex manufactures fabrics and interlining for fashion, design, and garment production, focusing on cotton textiles, recycled materials, and circular economic practices, with products certificate to ensure they are free from harmful substances.
Varieties is a Spanish company that has provided us a variety of materials with different compositions, such as banana, agri-waste, orange, sea seal, and other interesting materials. We'll know more about this company later. As Fibras Naturales Canarias, they sent us Masapiel, a material designed to imitate leather, developed in the Canary Islands from banana fiber.
We use a characterization technique, scanning electron microscopy, SEM, which allows us to examine the structure of fibers at high magnification. We prepare the sample by cutting a small piece of the material and placing it on a special holder.
As an example of the materials we analyze using SEM, we can look at several samples of materials. Cypress denim mimics traditional denim and is produced from recycled cotton blended with Japanese cypress fibers. It features an organized structure with a distinct visible pattern. Kapok, started from the ceiba tree, contains hollow fibers that are commonly used as a lightweight, sustainable filling material. Masking is a plant-based alternative to animal leather, derived from mushroom tissue. As we observe them together, as a conclusion, structurally, the breast denim shows a more ordered arrangement, while masking appears compact and kapok displays a looser structure with widely dispersed fibers.
We have social media accounts on LinkedIn and Facebook, where you can have access to the latest news if you scan the QR codes that appear on the screen. We also have a project website where we regularly update the latest progress and developments in our blog. Subscribe to our newsletter if you want to be the first one reading our progress.
Our first speaker of the day will be Pilar Ureña, coming directly from the Canary Islands, an expert artisan who has studied for years the benefits of banana plant fibers, and today she will share with us some of her learning.
Gracias por la invitación para poder presentar este trabajo de investigación con la fibra de platanera. Soy artesana de fibras vegetales, artesana textil, pero me he especializado en una fibra que es la fibra de platanera. De hecho, mi logo es una de las hojas de la platanera, que aquí en Canarias se le llama corbatilla, que tradicionalmente no se utiliza en artesanía y es una investigación que hice en solitario por no poder acceder a lo que es el tallo de la planta. Os voy explicando un poco lo que es la materia prima. Esto es un cultivo, en la foto de la izquierda podéis ver el cultivo de platanera. Veis que el suelo está completamente lleno de fibra vegetal por la sencilla razón de que una vez que se corta el racimo, toda la planta se tiene que cortar. En la foto siguiente podéis ver que hay una planta, porque no es un árbol, es una herbácea gigante la platanera. Entonces veis la más grande que tiene el racimo y después veis pequeñitas alrededor. Una incluso está cortada. Pues es como una familia. La que está cortada es la abuela, la que tiene el racimo es la madre y la chiquitita de abajo es la hija. Es decir, la abuela ya fue cortada para que creciera la madre. Y una vez que corten el racimo, volverán a cortar a esa media altura, porque todavía tiene que alimentar un poquito al hijo y ésta seguirá creciendo. Entonces, el cultivo se va moviendo poquito a poco, ¿no? Tienen que seleccionar muy bien qué hijo se va a quedar para que no se desmadre el cultivo y siga pues más o menos en una zona. Esa es mi materia prima. Lo que veis con capas concéntricas es el tallo cortado en sección, que se puede separar, es como si fuera una cebolla, un puerro, y esas rayitas que se ven en el medio es la red vascular donde va la savia. Cuando separas cada capa sería como un cartón corrugado y puedes volver a separar las capas dejando una fibra por un lado y otra que es como un papel por el otro, y en el medio se queda esa red vascular que se raspa. Y justo encima del racimo podéis ver que hay una hojita que es la hoja de la que os hablaba al inicio, que es la corbatilla, y es con la que yo puedo hacer estas cosas así tan refinadas, porque es un hilo que no ha generado esa red vascular, porque toda la savia se ha ido al fruto, entonces la fibra, que es más fina que un pelo, está prácticamente intacta y entonces puedo hacer estas cosas así tan refinadas. Esta sería la fibra seca. Ya veis, aquí estoy haciendo como una especie como de punto. Y entonces la gama cromática es la que veis al lado. Va desde el beige hasta el marrón chocolate y entonces yo puedo hacer combinatorias cromáticas con esos colores, ¿no? Y aquí ya está el proceso de transformación, que es muy simple. Yo no utilizo nada eléctrico, lo hago todo manualmente. Una vez que he dejado, que he separado estas hojas, las dejo secar completamente, después las rehidrato. Veis en la foto arriba a la derecha que estoy separando esa capa que os decía y obtengo la fibra que veis abajo. Y ahí voy afinando hasta que puedo obtener un hilo o puedo también hacer botones que muchas veces me resultan muy útiles. Pero el proceso es completamente manual, no tiene ningún tipo de consumo energético y el agua que utilizo para rehidratar, como no tiene ningún tipo de producto, vuelve otra vez, la utilizo como agua de riego. Estas son mis herramientas, la mano, agujas para todo el tema de la práctica textil y una tijera. Realmente lo que hago es unir y separar, unir y cortar. También utilizo muchísimas técnicas de cestería que son exclusivamente manuales. Se utiliza una aguja para realizar los acabados. Estas ya son técnicas. Aquí esto es una técnica del neolítico, es una cestería cosida con ciertas variaciones. Tiene la de arriba que es circular, pues es la técnica pura, igual que la de al lado, que es así una vista más de cerca, y las de abajo son variaciones con un bordado sobre encima, combinando la cestería cosida y simplemente un encintado con la fibra. Aquí ya hay otras técnicas. Esa técnica que ves en el lado izquierdo, arriba y abajo, está hecho con un ganchillo, que es como esta de aquí, que veis la parte de adelante y la parte de atrás. Es como antiguamente se hacían las alfombras en las casas. La otra es una técnica de telar y la de abajo también es una técnica de telar, pero mientras que la de arriba está realizada con un cordón, la de abajo está realizada simplemente con la lámina, con una lámina un poquito ancha de la fibra, porque puedo ir desde una lámina hasta un hilo con la misma fibra, simplemente afinando, o sea, quitándole hebras. Estas son otras técnicas, es la fibra suelta, que muchas veces se utiliza y queda muy bonita, punto, técnicas de cestería, como veis arriba, a la derecha es un entrelazado con diferentes fibras, en la parte de arriba más beige es con la fibra limpia, en la de abajo es con esa red vascular que yo a veces la obtengo y me queda algo así como peludito, que también la utilizo en varias piezas, y la que veis debajo en el lado derecho es como una especie de anillado que también tiene mucha utilidad. Bueno, aquí seguimos en la parte superior, tanto izquierda como derecha, es la misma técnica de entrelazado, que se pueden obtener diferentes texturas simplemente curvando un poquito lo que sería la trama horizontal y manteniendo la urdimbre vertical. Las de abajo es la misma técnica, es una técnica de anillado, pero cambiando las secuencias. Entonces el movimiento es el mismo, pero obtengo texturas radicalmente diferentes. En el lado de la izquierda podéis ver como una especie de hexágonos que voy haciendo primeramente haciendo unos triángulos equiláteros en anillado, lo hago con una aguja, ¿no? Haciendo disminuciones y después los monto y salen estos hexágonos y se ve mucho esa gama cromática muy variada que tiene, le da un toque jaspeado que se va produciendo de manera aleatoria, no es algo que yo busque, lo que es muy cómodo. Y en el lado derecho, que se ve una especie de encaje de aguja que hago también con el mismo anillado, pero haciendo secuencias diferentes, movimientos hacia adelante, hacia atrás, abriendo el anillado de una manera mayor, menor, y se van creando estas texturas. Quiero destacar aquí que realmente es el mismo movimiento, pero se consiguen texturas completamente diferentes. Lo que quiero destacar aquí es la resistencia del hilo. Fui probando, porque la investigación mía era llevar esta fibra de platanera al máximo posible. Y un reto era que atravesara una superficie y no se despelusara, ¿no? Entonces era el bordado. Y bueno, finalmente pasó la prueba muy bien, con telas muy duras. Llegué a bordar en loneta, llegué a bordar con puntos muy pequeñitos y lo pudo soportar muy bien. Y eso son como 3 muestras de esos intentos de bordado que utilicé. Aquí ya hay piezas. Me he centrado con vosotras con el tema de la moda. Yo ahora estoy muy dedicada también al interiorismo. Siempre he estado dedicado realmente al interiorismo, pero hubo un momento que me ofrecieron la oportunidad de investigar con el tema de moda y me gustó mucho. Podéis ver, esto fue creo que en el 2022, en la Fashion Week de Madrid. que realicé para una diseñadora canaria todos los accesorios, tanto de pendientes como de bolsos de esa colección. Una de las características muy interesantes para el tema de la moda de esta fibra es que es tan ligera que puedes hacer cosas enormes sin que pesen. Por ejemplo, el tamaño de estos pendientes es considerable, pero el lóbulo de la oreja no cuelga, simplemente llevas esto y es muy cómodo porque no da peso en la... Y la otra de la izquierda es una especie de diadema que ya veis que está completamente calada. Yo le llamo encaje de aguja porque realmente se asemeja mucho al encaje de aguja y veis que está completamente abierta, no tiene ningún tipo de soporte, pero precisamente por ser tan ligera no colapsa, no se cae el bordado, no tiene nada más que es entrelazado. Aquí ya son bolsos también que se realizaron para esa colección, hay variaciones, yo hice este bolso y después hice variaciones para esa colección. Aquí también son variaciones de bolsos que tenía que yo después adapté para esa colección. Este está hecho con punto, con paneles de punto de 2 agujas y las uniones que veis que tienen como diferente, una textura diferente, es ese anillado del que os hablaba. Entonces hace un aspecto así como de puzzle, de damero. Este es un modelo de bolso y el otro es otro, pero son bolsos muy grandes y solamente llevan fibra, no llevan nada más que incluso el asa es de fibra. Aquí se ven otros modelos combinando diferentes técnicas. Este tiene como bolsos exteriores, todo el asa, todo el anillado, el cierre, todo es la fibra, está hecho con punto y el de al lado es un cesto en el que tienen 2 técnicas, la cestería cosida, que os decía que es una técnica del neolítico, el anillado y después las asas están hechas con cordón. Solamente no tiene ni forro, voy jugando con las estructuras más resistentes para no tener que utilizar ningún elemento más. Al final es un poco llevar esta fibra al límite de sus capacidades, no porque no quiera utilizar otra cosa, sino para ver qué da de sí, ¿no?
Mhm.
Podemos pasar. Aquí siguen más bolsos. Esto fue una especie de homenaje al bolso Fendi. Podéis ver en una es solamente la técnica de anillado en el lado de la izquierda, incluso con su cierre. En el lado de la derecha, que también es solo fibra, ahí hay una técnica también de cestería neolítica, que es la técnica del entrelazado, y veis que hay 2 texturas diferentes, ¿no? Una es como más peludita. Esa peludita es la que hago con la red vascular de la fibra. Os decía que cada capa es como un cartón corrugado. Esa ondulación del medio, yo de ahí puedo sacar unos hilos que tienen pelitos así alrededor y que también puedo utilizar con la misma técnica, pero obtengo una textura completamente diferente. Bueno, aquí sigue con las mismas formas, diferentes asas. El color que veis oscuro en el bolso de la izquierda es esa corbatilla, esa hojita que es radicalmente distinta en calidad y en color, en cromatismo. Entonces se puede jugar mucho con esos contrastes. Veis que es incluso un poquito brillante. Entonces eso me permite con una sola materia prima conseguir todas estas variedades. Aquí podéis ver el bolso de la izquierda es un juego que he hecho de llevar al extremo lo que me ofrece la platanera. Es un cesto hecho con técnica entrelazada, el cierre es un tejido que he bordado con la fibra de platanera y el asa es el raquis donde están los plátanos. Entonces, una vez que quitas los plátanos, sobre todo el final,
Mhm.
pues se queda esto. Entonces yo lo hidrato, le doy la forma y en este caso lo utilicé de asa. Y muchas veces el tema de la sostenibilidad es el eje central de mi trabajo. Entonces cuando dicen, bueno, si se separa esto, Pues, excepto la tela, que es una tela de algodón, todo el resto es fibra. Y en el siguiente caso eran como unas aberturas de boca de lobo y están hechas tejidas en punto, jugando un poco también con esa gama cromática. ¿Veis ese detalle central en color beige? Y después todo lo que envuelve la boca del lobo con esa corbatilla que ya veis que, no sé si podéis apreciar, que tiene cierto, está como satinada, entonces le da un acabado que yo valoro mucho. Estos son más pendientes de aquella colección, ya ha pasado bastante tiempo, 2 o 3 años. Bueno, aquí más pendientes hice, no sé si fueron 25 pares, pero siempre jugando. Ya veis que pesan tan poco que incluso con el movimiento de las modelos al caminar se movían, como se ve en la foto más amplia. Ha sido la última colección de pendientes que hice, que fue un homenaje a la argolla canaria, que es una argolla tradicional que se utiliza muchísimo. Es una argolla que la podéis ver en Galicia. En varias culturas tienen esta forma de media luna y en el medio hay como unas ondas. Y esta es una argolla bastante grande, lo podéis ver en la modelo, es como unos 5 centímetros de diámetro, está hecha en plata. Se lo pedí a un joyero y yo lo que hice fue tejer encima. Esta era un reflejo más de la tradicional. Hice estos dos modelos, la central y la de la izquierda, y después ya empecé a hacer variaciones como la que está en el extremo derecho. Han sido las últimas colecciones ya que he hecho en estos momentos de pendiente. Lo siguen pidiendo, pero ahora me he centrado un poquito más en un tema de interiorismo de mayor tamaño. Pero bueno, lo que quiero destacar ahí, que realmente la finura que puede adquirir la fibra y el trabajo delicado que permite hacer. Llegamos como, creo que al final, mucha gente me dice, pero Pilar, por favor, y moda, y haz cosas, y haz chaquetas, y haz vestidos. Queda ahí la puerta abierta a alguna colaboración con alguien interesado en hacer una colección en este sentido. Ahí veis prototipos, una especie de manga que hice con esa técnica con la que os comentaba que era como de alfombras, pero que parece o borreguillo o astracán, yo le llamo astracán vegetal, pero tiene un tacto muy agradable. Y al final le puse pues como una especie de encaje en la manga y hay una amiga que es una interiorista canadiense que me dice, por favor, busca esa diseñadora o esa costurera o esa que te haga el patrón para que me hagas una chaqueta de este tipo. Podría ser una prenda muy ligera. Tendríamos que averiguar su resistencia, pues yo que sé, al uso. Podéis ver también una aplicación de bordado a un traje de lino y yo tenía esa pieza bordada y se la colocamos y el resto, pues bueno, se ve ahí una especie de broche tejido, pero es una flor que estuve tejiendo para una amiga que quería ir a una boda y que quería llevar este broche. Queda abierta esa puerta a la moda. Ahí me veis en el cultivo con una pieza muy grande que estoy tejiendo, que es una especie de escultura. La platanera al fondo, el mar, vivo en una isla y la platanera crece en la cota cero. Ahí tenéis mi Instagram para que podáis acompañar el trabajo. Pues muchísimas gracias y queda abierta la posibilidad de que la gente se pueda acercar aquí e investigar, porque el proyecto es más amplio de lo que yo represento. Tener en cuenta que el cultivo de plátano es el principal cultivo de Canarias y lo que se genera de residuo es 4 veces lo que se genera de frutos y eso sería magnífico que pudiera generar economía, que se pudiera transformar en una fibra de uso, o sea que quedan invitados a poder venir a Canarias quien quiera a investigar.
Pues muchas gracias. Our second speaker, ECHN, is representing Pyratex, a Spanish company that develops innovative and sustainable fabrics using natural and recycled materials. Its textiles combine technology with environmental responsibility.
Good morning. My name is ECHN. I'm working for Pyrotex, and I will explain you in this short presentation what Pyrotex is all about. So first of all, we're textile suppliers, which is why you see a fabric here. But first, I really would like to start to give you an impression of why we actually started this company and why it was done. Because as you probably know, there's lots of issues that we see currently in the textile industry. We see a change of consumerism. We see billions of garments being produced every year and many ending up on landfills. Even if you think and you put them in the right box to be recycled, often that doesn't really happen. So these are real hard numbers that I'm going to show you. Also, more than two-thirds of all textiles being produced at the moment are made from plastic or synthetics. So have a petrochemicals as a base, which means that they're not biodegradable, that they're emitting microplastics. It's estimated that half of a ton of microplastics are entering the marine environment each year because of textiles. And you think like, but yeah, but we're recycling, right? But in fact, that number of what's actually being recycled from textiles or from post-consumers is very, very small. It's less than 1%, and that number hasn't changed in the past years. So this is very concerning. We have changed the way we clothe ourselves in the past 20 years. Consumerism has been doubled, tripled. We consider clothes as old after 2 years of wear, or like with an average of 7 to 8 times of wearing them. And so this is with the rise of fast fashion and now ultra fast fashion. This is a type of consumerism that has a big impact on the planet. And then we have also the issue, obviously, of social conditions. Like we have the supply chain from fashion is so fragmented that we haven't forgotten where it's coming from. You find it in stores, but you don't really ask, like, oh, how is this garment made and how many hands has it been passed before it came here? And there's like many steps that has been done, and the social conditions obviously is a very big portion because lots of it is externalized into Asia, and often these workers are not getting paid a fair amount. But what we are really focusing on Pyrotex is the type of fibers and why you're thinking. And that's because the type of fibers have a huge impact on the life cycle of a garment. So as you can see here, it's 35% of the whole life cycle of a product just by the raw material and the fiber production. So just the choice of like what fabric, what fiber, what material will I be working with has a huge impact. So this is what we are focusing on in Pyrotex. We are a fabric supplier and R&D company, and we work exclusively with either recycled, new natural or bio-based materials and regenerative materials. So what we're aiming for is basically to replace and to show the textile industry, to offer them alternatives to virgin fibers or synthetic fibers. And we produce everything locally through a certified supply chain. So we are experts in circular knit fabrics, but we also work with wovens. We also work with knitwear. Circular knit fabrics, we can get to that a little bit later, but a type of fabrics that you often wear on your skin. And we take care from the beginning, from the fiber. So we choose the type of fibers that we work with, and then we take it all the way to the final product. Even though that our core business is being a fabric supplier for many brands, they don't have the garment manufacturing or production department in their brands. So we can also manage that for them to offer them like a real solution. So this is a little bit, if you see the textile supply chain, where our work starts. So you see that, so we do not invent the type of fibers. Actually, although the company did start it by creating and developing its first fiber, but then we realized that there's so many interesting fibers out there. And if you scratch a little bit the surface, and if people who are interested in the textile industry, they will see there's so many interesting, new, innovative fibers that we don't see in stores when we go shopping. So what we're trying to change is to scale those fibers and make them available to brands and to the textile industry or to the fashion industry as fabrics, because what brands actually are sourcing are not fibers. Brands and designers, what they're sourcing is fabrics. That's what inspires them. That's what gives them an idea like what the kind of product would look like. So to do all those different steps in the meantime, product development, development of yarn, fabric, dyeing, testing, and then maybe garment manufacturing. All those different steps is what we take care of at Pyretex. And so this is an example of what the type of fibers that we work with at Pyretex. And we will get more into detail which ones about that later. So, but you can see here all types of recycled materials. And mostly what we're aiming for is recycled materials from textiles, because this is where the biggest challenge still lies. As you just saw the numbers, on less than 1% of textiles is actually being recycled back into the fashion industry. So that's a big focus. Then we have like natural fibers that obviously, and that doesn't have to be like a very innovative fiber. It can also be like coming back to like ancient practices such as linen, which actually really makes sense. And it's a plant that does grow really fast, is very high quality, doesn't need lots of pesticides, doesn't need lots of irrigation, and that grows actually pretty naturally here in Europe. We also work with it like citrus agri waste, banana agri waste, that type of fibers. For the people who are not so familiar with, I think it's very important to understand like what's the difference between natural fibers and man-made fibers, and then within man-made fibers you have like bio-based, where it's based from a natural, it's a chemical process, but based from something that is natural, or that is synthetics, which is based from petrochemicals. So natural fibers, typically you have animal fibers and plant fibers. So plant fibers, the most well-known is cotton, is what everybody's wearing and is familiar with. But other things that we use with is linen, nettle, abaca, banana plant, so these type of. And then you have animal, which obviously most used is wool. But then there you also have alternatives that we also use, like recycled wool or spiber, which is a very interesting, it's like a lab-based protein fiber, mimicking an animal fiber. So just to give you a little bit of an idea of how well represented are these type of fibers on a yearly basis, how big they are being produced globally in the textile industry. So man-made fibers have a much bigger portion, and especially the synthetic ones. So the synthetic ones are the ones that are based on petrochemicals. So synthetic, the most common is polyester. Polyester you will find everywhere, but also polyamide, acrylic, and also elastan, which is also a big difficult fiber to get rid of because it gives all this elasticity in, for instance, sportswear. So you have within the synthetics, you have what we use is recycled. But then we also have now new fibers, which have like an accelerated biodegradability. And that's very interesting for us because synthetic fibers and garments and dyed garments, they can, biodegradation can take about 40 to 400 years. So that's like a real issue. I'm sure you maybe have seen like big piles of clothing in Ghana, in these type of places. So maybe you have seen those images, and that's mostly synthetic fibers. And then we have the cellulosic fibers, or the man-made cellulosic fibers, MMCFs. Basically, those fiber is a man-made fiber, but from a natural origin. So the most well-known is basically the wood origin, which is viscose or lyocell. And then between viscose and lyocell, they're all done through chemical processes, but lyocell is a more cleaner process where the chemicals are recuperated and not put into the wastewater. So let's say from cellulosic fibers, lyocell is a really good fiber, and this fiber is biodegradable. So I hope that helps a little bit. Now, deep diving a little bit into different fibers, we don't use that much animal fibers here at Pyrotex. Obviously, it is concerning that the wool industry is related to lots of emissions of CO2. But at the same time, it's also kind of like a novel fiber because it does have like all types of advantages and it's natural. So it's depending on how animal fibers are being collected, how animals are treated. If there's a lookout as well for responsible wool standard, RWS, for example, that is making sure that the sheep are treated well. And then there are different alternatives that we are looking for. For example, what I just mentioned, like spiber. There's also like silk is obviously also an animal fiber. It's not very common anymore to see real silk, but typically those cocoons are being killed when the silk is being harvested. So there are like ethical sourcing and production alternatives to that. So to focus a little bit more, what we focus most is natural fibers. And natural fibers, like we said, cotton cultivation is the biggest one. Since it's rather big, it's very important to look at like how is it being cultivated? How is it being grown? In what places are they using water that is from a source that other people need to access to? I mean, is it limiting the access to water by using water for the cotton cultivation? Are pesticides being used? Genetically modified organisms being used? So these are all things to take into account and that's why organic cotton obviously is very big, because organic cotton is reducing and limiting pesticides and GMOs. But what we're also looking for is taking organic cotton a step further and look for cotton that has been cultivated to regenerative farming practices. And that is actually is trying to do less damage, while regenerative farming practices are trying to do more good. It's going back a little bit to ancient practices, for example, old farming techniques like crop rotation, mixing animals with plants. It's all to improve the quality of the soil and to avoid those big, intensive agriculture that is then like completely depleting the soil. So that's regenerative cotton. And this is, for instance, how we make it and one of the brands that we work with and how they use it. There's actually cotton being grown in Spain. Most of the fibers that we work with and that you are wearing are not from Europe, because in Europe, we're not cultivating many fibers anymore. So mostly it comes from Asia. In terms of cotton production, 99% comes outside of Europe. So it's either the biggest producers are China, India, and then you have the US, Brazil. In Spain and also in Greece, we grow only less than 1% of cotton, while we do consume a lot of cotton as a producer. So that means that basically we're importing it far away. And what happens a lot with cotton, it's very fragmented supply chain. There's lots of trading being done of cotton. It's not so easy to really trace it and to make sure that it's done. We know that cotton has been cultivating here, and actually that cotton has mostly been sent abroad to be processed for the next steps, and which we thought it doesn't make sense. So we built a supply chain around the cotton that is built here in Spain. So the cotton is cultivated in Sevilla and Cadiz, and then it goes to the ginner. This is this particular process that you see right now. It's where they take out the seeds of the cotton. And it's been going through lots of cleaning processes before it's put into bales, and then it's being spun, and then we knit it into a fabric, which then is used by brands for this type of products. So textile to textile recycling is another big of our priorities. There are two types of textile to textile recycling: mechanically, which is, let's say, a bit more traditional. For example, cotton and wool is mechanically recycled. And so we work here with a factory in Spain as well that does this particular process. So it's post-industrial, mostly cotton that is being used, and which is then being shredded. It's pulled apart. It's all stuff is done to it basically, so that it goes back to the fiber and can be spun again into a yarn. This is like the softer fiber, which then packed, and then you see now the process of the yarn spinning, and now it's the knitting. This is the dyeing process and the finishing process. before to turn it into a fabric. We also use linen. Linen is typically being treated in order to make it softer, so that it's more similar to cotton. And this process is called cottonization. It's a chemical process. But that's the type of process that diminishes the quality of the fiber because it's basically putting chemicals to make it softer. We use non-cottonized linen that is being grown in France, so it's very local, which is then, as you can see here, the process of being spun before it goes into the fabrics being woven or knit into a fabric. And this is like an example of linen that we blend with cotton to give it like a very specific and clean look, type of fabrics that we like to do. Another fabric that we work with is banana agri waste. To harvest a banana, 2/3 of the plant is being cut, and traditionally it was burned, the rest. Now they're not allowed to anymore. But it is a lot of waste, especially the trunk can be used to take out the fibers and to use them for textiles. It's a very natural and absorbent fiber. It's quite strong. This is an example of the type of fabric that we did with it. It's a bit of a harsh fiber, so we blend it with cotton to make it a little bit softer. But here you can see a really nice ensemble from Gani, which is an amazing brand that we work with and that loves textile innovation. Then we go to man-made fibers, cellulosic fibers, and those are very interesting as well. We use lots of wood-based fibers in order to replace synthetics, and especially in sportswear. Sportswear is a segment or a category where it will be very difficult to find actually natural fibers or bio-based fibers because natural and bio-based fibers, they're more hollow in their structure, retain more water. So if you go jogging in a cotton t-shirt, it will be wet and it will retain. That's why we use cotton towels, because it absorbs the humidity. So we're looking for fibers and structures that allow the humidity to pass and not to be retained, because that's not what you want. So we work with especially not just structures, but also types of fibers that try to mimic synthetics in order to replace them. And so lyocell that we developed is one of them that you can see here. But the only hiccup here is that we can't completely make it bio-based because there always has to be elastan. So in this case, we're using recycled elastan because it's always a real challenge in the fashion industry to solve. Then they're like chemical recycler, textile to textile fabrics. So for instance, one of the biggest blends that's being used in the textile industry is polycotton. So a mix of polyester with cotton. Polyester is super, super cheap. And then maybe it will shrink maybe a little bit less during washing. It's often being used as a blend. And the issue is that when you go recycling, those two fibers, they have like a different recycling process. So now there's this new company called CSIC who has found a way to recycle that fiber. They are able to, like a very novel technique, in hydrothermal reaction, to separate the cotton cellulose from the polyester, and then the cotton cellulose is turned into a lyocell and the polyester is being recycled into a polyester. We develop yarn, we develop fabrics, and then if the brand wants us to, we also manage the garment manufacturer. It depends. And we also help the brands to explain the story to the customer. We also make it look like it's very easy, but often these fibers do not have the same tenacity, or they might not be as strong, or you need to test first what blends or what recipe is working the best. It's not that straightforward as it might seem. Another amazing innovation that we use is an extraction of cellulose from citrus waste. So basically from the peels of oranges. It's a very interesting video that we actually did for Loewe. Maybe it's real quick.
Orange peels every year. That's more than 3,000 Eiffel Towers, most of which ends up as waste. But discarded orange skins can serve an entirely new purpose. In Catania, Italy, a manufacturer called Orange Fiber sources orange peels from local juice producers. First, The juice is extracted from the oranges and the leftover peels are collected and processed for cellulose. This cellulose is then blended with certified wood pulp to create a stable, spinnable fibre. The fibre is spun into yarn, then knitted into fabric, and finished mechanically, ensuring softness, breathability and durability without the use of harsh chemicals. The finished fabric arrives at Loewe ateliers, where it is cut and assembled into garments. The result is a lightweight top made from agri-waste orange peels.
So this is amazing that a brand so big as Loewe actually is talking about its materials, which is not that common for luxury brands. And we work with a lot of luxury and premium brands as well. When you saw the oranges, that part is done by Orange Fiber, but all the other steps is Pyretex who takes care of it. And so it's also something that we often film so we can explain it to the consumer so they understand why this fabric is so special, because it's not something that you can see with the eye. The whole point here is offering alternatives that are not, that you can't see that is actually made from orange fiber, because you want to make the industry to adapt it for everything. So another fiber that we work with is a seaweed-based fiber. It's cellulose enriched fiber with seaweed that is sourced from Northern Atlantic, and it has lots of amazing properties. We work with the textile institutes here in Europe to ensure that the properties are being kept preserved in the fiber, and to show that like natural fibers and bio-based fibers or fabrics, what type of advantages they have by working and using these type of materials for your skin. The man-made fibers and the alternatives, to point out that most, like the knowledge of it is constantly developing, but the recycled polyester that we see in the bigger brands, it's mainly from bottles. And in the beginning, we were like, we're making sure that those bottles don't end up in the ocean. Fantastic. Actually, the more and more this fiber has been evolving, we realized that the type of bottles that are being used to recycle polyester, they're picked up at beaches or from the ocean. They're already like just being into the recycling bin, and they're already in the waste stream. And once they're being recycled into a textile, it's probably not going to be used anymore, because that textile, like we saw before, only 1% of textiles is being recycled and going back into the fashion industry. Let's say we have a down jacket and it's a polyester shell and a polyester lining, and then it has filling and the zipper and all these different materials. Nobody's taking apart that type of jacket to say like, okay, if I take out the stitching and I can use this polyester and I can recycle it back into it, it would be way too expensive. So that's not happening. So these are like barriers, like in terms of design for recycling. So basically what I would like to say is that the consensus about recycled polyester from bottles has been changed, because if you recycle bottles into bottles, they can be recycled endlessly. But if you recycle them in textiles, it's probably not going to happen. What we're looking for is basically alternatives. So we have like polyamide that has like an accelerated biodegradability, because this particular polyamide has a bio-based additive that makes it more attractive for the microbes. Then there's also the same biodegradable polyester. It's a very different type of technology. It has more to do with the molecule and what it looks like, but it also has accelerated biodegradability, and especially interesting as well because it doesn't shed. It's shedding microfibers. Every textile shedding microfibers, even like natural ones and cotton, but since it's biodegradable, it's not persistent, which means it doesn't end up in breast milk or in brains, because that's what studies have shown, that microplastics are showing up even in rain. And then obviously, beside fibers, there are other ways to production processes to be sustainable. So like dyeing and printing, there are like alternatives that either have like natural dyeing, bacterial dyes that are very interesting. We use zero water printing. And so that's a little bit in a nutshell who we are.
As the final speaker, we invited Elisenda Jacquemont, the representative for Squeeze the Orange, that is a creative studio and sustainable fashion platform that promotes innovation, responsible materials, and conscious design.
Soy Elisenda Jacquemont del proyecto Squeeze the Orange. Somos un proyecto de biomateriales aplicados al sector de la moda, junto con mi compañera Susana Jurado. Nosotras somos diseñadoras de moda, hemos trabajado durante 20 años en el sector formación en moda y a partir de aquí fue cuando empezamos a investigar para poder desarrollar algún prototipo con lo que se llamaba el biomaterial. Entonces, en primer lugar, queríamos aprovechar el residuo local, entender qué era un biomaterial y qué residuo local podíamos obtener de manera fácil, que también nos inspirara tanto por el color como por el olor, que fuera también fácil de obtener. Y aquí enseguida vimos que en nuestro desayuno diario pues teníamos un residuo que era oro para nosotras, que era la piel de la naranja. Con la piel de la naranja lo que queríamos hacer era un biomaterial para probar si podíamos usarlo en prototipos o colecciones de moda. Sobre todo lo que queríamos con el biomaterial era probar hasta qué punto el propio diseñador podía llegar hasta el principio de todo, a la hora de desarrollar su mood board de trabajo para hacer la colección de moda, si también podía tener la opción de poder crear su propio material. Delante de esta posibilidad, se nos abría un universo totalmente diferente de posibilidades. Y si además podíamos obtener este biomaterial a través de un residuo fácil de obtener, también vimos que la naranja tenía muchas propiedades, tanto por el olor, también el cítrico que nos hacía sentir bien. Y todo esto lo queríamos poder tener en un solo material para poder luego mostrar en una pasarela, no solamente en la forma y el diseño de la colección, sino también la parte sensorial, sensitiva, que puede desprender un biomaterial. Un biomaterial es un tejido que es vivo y lo que se pretende es que se descomponga con el tiempo para que no tengamos un residuo. Entonces empezamos a probar con la piel de naranja e intentamos hacer un prototipo con un biomaterial que fuera resistente y también sostenible. Aquí en estas imágenes que os mostramos hicimos la primera prueba de deshidratación de la naranja y también de la masa que obteníamos para poder hacer el biomaterial y después poder llevar a la práctica el poder cortarlo, coserlo y de alguna manera pues poder hacer este prototipo. La innovación y nuestro propósito es que se pudiera usar este material para tanto las piezas de colecciones de moda como también de poder hacer accesorios que fueran biodegradables o que se pudieran compostar. También nuestra innovación consistía en hacer un material que fuera resistente, flexible y 100% natural, y que esto se pudiera reproducir, no solamente que quedara en una pieza de artesanía. Tuvimos nuestro estudio de ver dentro del ecodiseño donde podían estar situados los biomateriales, dentro de los polímeros naturales. Y a partir de aquí ya pudimos hacer también nuestro primer prototipo, que actualmente pues lo tenemos expuesto en el Museo del Diseño de Barcelona durante 3 años. También cabe decir que para obtener este residuo local, hemos hecho un mapa de colaboración de entidades locales donde poder obtener este residuo de naranja, por lo que entendemos que el diseño de moda también tiene una repercusión en nuestro entorno, tanto por estas entidades que nos ayudan y entienden que el residuo puede ser también una primera materia para poder generar algo en la industria de la moda. Y después nosotras también, como parte de comunicación dentro de este prototipo, de esta colección, cómo podemos encajarlo en un entorno urbano con un propósito de economía circular y donde también el diseño sea una herramienta de democratización del conocimiento a través de los biomateriales. También hay que decir que nuestro proyecto ha sido premiado con el premio STARTS 2021, otorgado por la Comisión Europea en Austria, y esto nos ha permitido poder seguir investigando y desarrollando nuestros prototipos. También hemos quedado finalistas en el East for Fashion, donde presentamos nuestro proyecto con otras firmas y proyectos que estaban a punto de poder ser lanzadas en el mercado dentro del ámbito de la moda sostenible. Como proyecto de moda hemos participado en el Where Fashion Meets Nature en Euskadi, donde pudimos hacer por primera vez una pasarela con nuestro prototipo. Aquí tenéis una imagen. Es el encuentro de la moda con la naturaleza y creemos que puede crear también una simbiosis entre el mundo de la moda, la naturaleza, la alimentación. Son maneras de poder abordar la moda de forma diferente y también creemos que el biomaterial puede ser para los nuevos diseñadores una herramienta muy potente para poder comunicar nuevos retos. Para finalizar, aquí os dejamos una imagen de un QR donde podéis entrar a ver nuestras fotografías en nuestro perfil de Instagram. También tenéis nuestros 2 correos, podéis contactar con nosotras directamente. Sobre todo también podéis entrar en nuestra página web squeezetheorange.es, donde encontraréis las informaciones de nuestras últimas ferias, participaciones en exposiciones y también un formulario de contacto. Muchas gracias.
To conclude, today we explore innovative new materials that are shaping the future of the textile industry. I would like to thank every brand and creator who contribute to this project by branding samples and valuable insights.
Thank you very much for your attention, as we would like also to thank these outstanding speakers whose extensive experience in various areas of fashion sustainability will surely serve you as a valuable source of inspiration for your own career. We're excited to announce that the next webinar related with this project will be out soon, and we'll let you know different interesting details about this project.